Hello and welcome to another episode of Lead with Curiosity. My name is Anthony Donovan. I'm your host, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Lisa-Marie Mallier. She's a bit of a local celebrity, though she'll hate me for saying that. So Lisa is the founder of a business called No Fluff Communication. She's also the vice chair of Banbury Chamber of Commerce, very well connected, very knowledgeable. And today I'm going to be sitting down with Lisa to really get her views and insight into high performance and high performance culture. It's going to be shared with loads of insights. So enjoy the episode. Lisa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. Super excited to have you on the pod today. Could we start with a little bit about your background for those that don't know you? Tell us about your story.
Sure. So my background's predominantly been in strategic marketing for larger corporate organisations, and that stems really from my passion for communication.
Fantastic. And in terms of where you've worked and the types of organisations you've worked with?
Yeah, a huge part of my background's actually been in financial services, which I find really interesting from a communication point of view. Quite often they're the products and services we use in our everyday lives, but actually the hardest ones to sell to. It's a bit easier to sell your retail products and consumer e-commerce products to customers. While we all need these products, they're not necessarily the things that are at the forefront of our mind in terms of buying.
And you've gone from, we were talking earlier about how a lot of people go from a corporate role into setting up on themselves. No easy feat by any stretch. You're the founder of No Fluff Communications. Yep. I've got to ask about that name as well, by the way, because I love that. Talk me through that transition from corporate to setting up on your own.
Yeah. Do you know what? It was one of the things I always said I'm never going to work for myself. I was blessed actually earlier on in my career to work in a small marketing agency where it was pretty much just me and the marketing director. So a great experience to see how a small entity runs, but equally to see how much work goes into it. And whilst I'm not work shy, I always wanted to be able to work around family. That was really important to me. And I think I thought that I couldn't have my cake and eat it. However, having worked corporately for quite a long time, it's great from a skills and experience point of view, especially when you are managing and leading people. But when you have your own family, your priorities change. And that's what it was for me. So it was about having a shift to have more time for the family. But also, I think it's quite typical when you've worked in a corporate organisation for a while that as a senior specialist, you have ways that you think that you'd like to do things differently. So No Fluff really was born out of working flexibly around the family, but believing that there was a different way to do business, and in my case, marketing.
So if I were a client of No Fluff, what would I get from me? What services do you offer?
Sure, it's always a hard question to answer because I think people have different perceptions of what marketing means to them. It's a really wide, varied role. So No Fluff Communications focuses more on the communication side of marketing, and a lot of that tends to be content-led. So rather than digital marketing, it's around creating thought leadership content, so your blog posts, social posts, white papers, and a strong element of our offering as well is public relations, given the background of a lot of the team.
I can't help but laughing at the fact there was no fluff there in that answer as well, which is great. So you obviously practice what you preach.
I definitely try to.
Fair play to you. One of the reasons, many reasons I wanted to invite you along today, but one of them born out of a conversation that you and I had, you may recall, a few months back, and it was around high performance and your passion and experience that really came across, and I wanted to really kind of tap into that, if I may. So when you think of the best teams that you've either led or been part of, are there any consistent traits that you recognise that underpin that high performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is only one. And for me, that is trust. Especially in a lot of the teams that I've worked where we're working with quite senior specialists, you don't need to know everything about the job yourself. They're in their role because they have this degree of specialism. So when you're managing high-performing teams or creating high-performing teams of specialists in particular, it's really important that you have an element of trust. So what I mean by that is that trust allows for a sort of degree of psychological safety. They're there, they're employed to do a job, they've passed the interview process, they've passed a probationary period. So we assume they can do the job from a skills perspective. But in order to sort of unite a team, there has to be an element of trust. So to allow for a degree of like taking risks, to be able to identify new ways of working, to learn from each other, and to work collaboratively. So for me, I would take trust over sort of skills any day of the week.
I would disagree. But I'm curious, how do you build or create a culture of trust? Because you rightly said you've got to trust that the people in the trenches with you can do their job. But how would you go about, or how have you gone about building a culture of trust?
Yeah, it's a hard one because I think, again, it's almost an overused term, trust, right? It's something that quite often sits on those corporate posters of our key values and our words. But actually what that means in reality, I think, is very different to all the individuals. So for me, it's always been about having really open and frank, honest conversations with your team about them individually. So what is it? What does success look like for them? And what do they need from you in order to do the job to the best of their ability? And those answers will be very different for every individual, especially if you've got a team of mixed skill or mixed experience. So I think it starts with a real good understanding of the individual that's in your team. Why do they turn up for work? What is their driver? Are they motivated by money, or is it about flexibly working around their family? And what does a good job look like to them? If you don't understand those things, I think you can't, as a manager, help create that environment around what they're there to essentially do every day, and then have that contextual understanding as a team. And I'm sure there will be, quite often in my experience, values that overlap between those individuals, especially in terms of what good looks like, because they're all there for a common purpose and goal, and then it's spelling that out really clearly, but in a way that's individualized for them.
And I guess that's a key part of the recruitment process, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, you talked about having that common goal and that common purpose, but making sure you've got the right fits in the organisation as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think when if you go right back for applying for a job in the first place, you're signing up to a role based on your skills, but you don't really know, from an employee perspective, what you're signing up to in terms of the culture of an organisation. And, for me, it's really key if you get an individual that comes to you as part of that interview process who bothers to ask the questions of, so what's the culture like here? What's the team like here? What can I expect? What does a typical day look like? Or you can prompt some of those questions yourself. How will you know? What would a good day look like to you? How would you feel valued? And how do you like to be motivated?
I love those questions. One of the favourite questions I've seen used in an interview was thinking about your career to date. And if you're fresh out of college, it might be from the college point of view. When you were at your peak, what role did your manager play?
Yeah, that's a really good
one. Which I guess there's a way of saying how do you like to be managed, but just again, it just gets a little bit deeper. So
100%. And I think, again, as you go up, like I was talking about, more experienced teams, what they need from you is so different. It's the same as sort of like the basic hierarchy of needs. When you're starting out in your career, you kind of need that hand holding, you need the introduction, you might need some of the softer interpersonal skills as well as an understanding of the organisation and the role that you're there to play. When you're further into your career, you're looking to make a difference, I think, essentially. And that difference to everybody might mean something else, but you're all coming to work with a goal. You've all had days where you've left and you're frustrated because you feel like you haven't got through your to-do list. But I think a manager's role is about breaking down the actions, really, and the activities. We're not just here to do this never-ending to-do list of activities. What are the key things that need to happen today, or that I can help you with in order to kind of move the needle towards where we're trying to get to as a team?
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, we were chatting before recording about the burnout thing. We've both experienced organisations and seen organisations where it's meeting after meeting after meeting, and then I'm supposed to do my job when exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
How do we create this balance between having the ownership and having the accountability and driving high performance, but not making it so pressurised that people just feel so burnt out that they just can't cope?
I think it's a really hard, and I would argue increasingly harder, in a day where we have technology that's moving so fast as well. It is really difficult to shift our expectations of individuals while we are making businesses leaner and more efficient, to not then expect the individual to just do twice as much because they have these tools. I've experienced corporate burnout myself. So, and that took me by shock. I didn't even see the warning signs coming. So it's something that I'm quite passionate about, being a bit more aware of what's going on in your team members' individual lives. You know, quite often for me, burnout doesn't come from the inability to do the job or the task that's set. It comes from confusion or overwhelm of multiple things being expected, of which work can be a small part of their day. You know, that can start, especially for parents, from the moment you wake up. And you know, we're seeing, you know, parents with challenges around neurodivergent children as well. So you can work up from day dot and you've already been through the ringer before you get to work. And then you might have traffic or whatever it is on top of that, or multiple meetings online where you're not actually having a connection with an individual. So I think it's understanding your team, what they've got going on in a context of around work. And again, being really clear on what it is we're here to achieve and what needs to happen for us to deliver that, not a to-do list of everything. I think as individuals, we're guilty of trying to prove our self-worth through multiple tasks. But actually, all that needs to happen quite often is a simple goal. And there's more than one way to get that, or to lean on your team as a support network. So I think it's about having that wider understanding of the individual and being aware of what their whole working life looks like, not just the moment they're at work.
So two things really stand out for me there. I think it circles back to your first answer about trust and really getting to understand what makes them tick. But clarity seems to be coming through and not trying to boil the ocean. Yeah. Would that be fair?
Yeah, definitely. I guess, and harking back to the name of my company, No Fluff, marketing is a business where quite often you hear people describing the fluffy stuff. There's a lot of it. The colouring in department, exactly that, except I'm no good at the actual colouring in either. So I sit in a weird field there. But, you know, it's really difficult, again, even for our team, that sometimes there's a lot of our activities that we do where there are no hard and fast markers to know that we've succeeded. You know, if digital marketing's easier, you can track everything. In the world of communicating, it's not about how much you're saying, it's about what's being heard. So the perception is just as much important as the output. So I think, you know, being really clear about what you expect from your team, what good looks like to you as a function, but also what success looks like to them individually. And if you can get them to agree as a team, what success looks like to a team, then even when you are met with endless to-do lists or something comes in to, you know, upset the apple cart, you can go back to the real basics of what's really important. If I've only got to get one thing done today, what matters most? So I think the clarity, both from a line manager and as an individual, to know and have the confidence and the reassurance that this is what benefits everybody, it makes it easier than making that call as an individual.
Yeah, I agree. I'm reflecting on some of the high-performing teams that I've been lucky enough to work with and support. And there are two trends, I guess, that I've noticed. One is people are no longer setting objectives, they're setting outcomes. Yeah. So I think this is an obsession in this country with smart objectives that end up being about 6 paragraphs long, respectfully.
And nobody actually knows how to write one very often.
Whereas you start with an outcome that's generally 6 words long max and then work backwards. Yeah. Those smart objectives write themselves, but having that clarity. And then the second trend is having 90-day plan, which you often associate with a probation and introduction to the business. But if everybody has a 90-day plan, what 5 things have I and or my team achieved? Yeah. Which means we'll look back with a sense of pride. But also on a personal level, have I got 5 things in my diary in the next 90 days that I'm looking forward to? Yeah. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about that clarity piece.
Yeah, I think, you know, and maybe that comes back to working in communication. It's really important that that the message is, you know, understood, not just received. Yeah. So then it makes it less about the amount and more about the clarity. And again, I suppose working agency and in-house side, you get to see that from two different sides of the coin. You have different challenges. Internally, you have your job that you're, as part of your role, you're there to deliver. But then you have this huge entity as the organisation around it, and things change, like inevitably they do. And when you have trust as a team and that psychological safety, you quite often get hand in hand with that is resilience. So when things change, you can flex, you can adapt, you can lean on your team. When you don't have that trust to be able to do that, all of those things go out the window. When you work agency side, it's different because you've obviously got a contract to fulfill with a client for usually set pieces of work. So it can be easier in terms of what good looks like. But as we all know, as relationships develop, or even your clients will stray from, what they're asking, what they're paying you for, essentially, because what they're paying for you for is support, not, okay, outcomes are part of that, but it's a trusted partner again. It's if something else crops up, are you going to turn around and say, I'm not delivering it because that's not part of one of our objectives? Or is there a conversation to be had to find out why that's important and where it sits and whether you drop another piece of activity or you start a new one? So for me, that's why it always comes back to clarity and trust. You can't have trust without clarity. They do go hand in hand.
So you're very much a partner, not a supplier.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's actually a selling point of ours, but equally it causes us difficulties when people say, what can you do for us? Because we don't have set defined support packages. A lot of what we do, we're a bespoke agent, so we build it around the client and their challenges, and it comes in asking the key questions at the start of that relationship. They might come to us and say, I need social media support. And when you ask them why they think they need social media support or what good looks like to them or what challenge they're trying to solve commercially, quite often it can be a different solution. So yes, we have set prices for things that we can deliver. We don't really know what that looks like until we get working with a client. So they're paying for our time and our expertise and our relationship. And the rest is kind of shaped out of that in terms of outcomes.
Which links back to the high performance of that client, right? Because ultimately you want to make sure that they get bang for the buck.
Yeah, exactly. And they have to be bought into what we're delivering. Again, I've found time and time again, whether it's internal or external marketing support, there is that danger of the client paying for something that they think they're going to get and that perceived value. And quite often we'd have to take them on an education journey ourselves into marketing and get them to really think about their ideal customer and what it is they want from them. Clients can be more guilty of, we just need more stuff, which is where no fluff came from. I need more fluff, and it's not necessarily that. But what do you want? What are you trying to achieve? Is it more leads? Is it more sales? Is it that people think you're maverick and you need to change the perception of you? So it is really drilling down onto the psychological part of commercially, what does success look for you versus what does working with us, like successful partnership with us, look like? And more often than not, the clients are like, I know we need to do marketing, but I just hate it. I don't get it. It's complicated. I don't know what we need to do. I'm looking for essentially a marketing director to help us steer what it is that good looks like. And yes, we trust you to deliver on the tactical, but it's solving those sort of commercial headaches, really.
So I guess circling back to the relationship of a leader and a team, it's the same thing, right? Ultimately working out what the outcome is and then...
Yeah, and what we don't just all go to work for the money, because you could argue that if that was the case, we'd all want to, work in sectors that are inherently known for being well paid. I mean, we don't. People have vocational jobs or, it always comes back to the individual of making a difference, usually. Yes, there's a hygiene factor of earning enough money to pay the bills, but it's because we all feel we've got a unique skill set, talent or experience that we can offer the world. And, the best case of scenario is we enjoy our job when we go to work and we do it. And we find people that resonate with us and we feel part of a unit. And I think in the world of working more remotely and with more technology, you could argue we're more connected than ever, but equally less connected as people.
I agree completely. Just from a balanced perspective, is there a danger of you experienced any examples where I don't want to be controversial, but people are overly sensitive to people's needs, and that can
Yeah.
actually lead to a lower level of performance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is the danger. And I would say more often than not, it's when you become a manager for the first time.
Right.
So when you're stepping up into the manager role, you want to be liked. You still want to be liked, right? We're all people at the end of the day. Nobody wants to be that boss. But so we all want to be liked. And I think it's always, that's why it's harder if you step up internally, because people see you in your previous role. It's easier sometimes to move externally. It's same as being a parent. I'm there to be a parent first, to the best of my ability, and I hope at the end of my role that you will respect and like me. But there is definitely going to be times during this process and relationship together that you're not going to at all.
Yeah.
So I think, you have to try and separate yourself from that role. To be a true leader is about understanding where the organisation needs to be, who you've got to help you deliver that, and being the visionary for them, but then helping them to be the best versions of themselves to help you as a leader to make it forward as a unit. You can't do it on your own. That's the difference between a manager and a leader. Managing is, you're there to make sure people get their tasks and the job done, and hopefully in a supportive way. A leader is sometimes you don't always have the answers. You're kind of creating that direction, and you're trying to get them to believe in you and your purpose, right? And come forward with you on this journey that you probably haven't worked out yourself sometimes.
Yeah. So just as we look to wrap up the conversation, just a couple more questions. There's always a lot of advertising around being a great place to work, and I've seen examples of places where they have great restaurants, there's a gym. I'm just curious to get your thoughts. Is that what makes a great place to work, or is there something a bit beyond that? I guess I'm setting you up for a slightly leading question here, because I think I know what your answer will be. But
it's a bit like shop advertising, isn't it? I think it matters more when you're looking around at potential employers. It's another tick box, isn't it? It's a nice environment. I remember one of the employers I had a swimming pool. That was pretty impressive. I think I used it once in the 5 years I was there. The idea of perks, it's not to say that they don't have a certain value and that you shouldn't offer them. But for me, great places to work have been more about those that offer opportunities. So rather than fundamental things that you compare against employees, is opportunities. So whether that's an opportunity for learning, for you to better yourself individually, that will obviously benefit while you're an employee, but equally makes you a more valuable asset when you leave. Or whether it's opportunities to actually, be promoted in an organisation and to contribute. Most people just want to be heard, seen and heard, and feel valued. So great places to work are the ones that allow their staff to become the best versions of themselves, in my opinion.
Love that. And I think a sense of purpose as well.
Yeah.
Of actually, what am I doing? Would anybody notice if my job or my team didn't exist?
Yeah, 100%. And there are nicer things that I think that employers can encourage. So, when we did work with bigger firms, you can, collectively put in for external awards which recognise team performance. And that's lovely if you can come and celebrate and take the moment in that process to actually go back over everything you've achieved in order to put an application forward in the first instance and then win one collectively as a team. That's a lot more enjoyable than going up and winning an individual award, from my opinion. So, the ones that create a culture for you to do your best and equally to leave and not feel frazzled at the end of the day. Because going back to the burnout as well, a lot of the time, part of burnout is that you feel like you're maybe not quite achieving everything you should, whether that's your long to-do list or your frustration of being able to do things in a way you want to. Burnout comes from that confusion and that overwhelm. Great places to work are ones that invest in their people, and then that's investing in their people to be the best versions of themselves in a work environment.
Couldn't agree more. So for anyone listening that's thinking, hey, I need a marketing director, but I really don't like marketing and I need something that's no fluff, how would somebody find you, reach out to you, and what do you say to them?
So LinkedIn, if it's me directly, is probably probably the best way. Obviously, we have a website, which I can give you the details for, but LinkedIn is the sort of our preference for channel. We focus mainly on B2B, professional services. Anyone technical, got all that great knowledge, but don't know how to actually articulate it in a way that might land or resonate with their own customer, we love that challenge.
Superb. Well, we'll make sure we put the link to your LinkedIn and your website in the show notes as well. So one last question. As you're aware, the name of this pod is Lead with Curiosity. We ask everybody exactly the same question. What are you curious about learning or doing next?
I think I'll always be curious to continue learning about people. The psychology of people fascinates me, but particularly with the adoption of AI, which is fast paced and it's coming with all the automation, all the efficiency, is how do we retain that human touch in a way that doesn't make our teams feel afraid of the technology and the changes that are coming, and that they, if it's done right, should be engaged to be able to do, the best work. So it's how the AI and the human relationships, particularly in service-based industries, will play out.
I think it's fair to say that's been a common theme, and it's definitely something we need to work on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. I've been dying to sit down with you, and I'm really glad I finally got the opportunity to do so. So, Lisa,
thank you very much.
Thank you. My thanks to Lisa. She didn't let me down. I really enjoyed that conversation. It was really interesting to tap into Lisa's thoughts around the importance of both trust and clarity. I thought that really, really came through. And as she was saying towards the end of that conversation, great places to work. They're not just about the perks. Listen, everyone likes a free donut, right? But it's also about trust, performance, and making sure that there's genuine value in what you do. So thanks as always to you for listening. Please press the follow button if you like the content and listen to the episodes we've already recorded. And we look forward to seeing you next time.